Revelation chapter 7. And at the end of last week's lesson, I said that I wanted to read you a little bit from Eli Borden's book, The Death of the Beast. And so we'll start with it. This kind of brings us up to date. This is the end of chapter 6 that he's commenting on. It says, often, when God was victorious in the Old Testament, calamities such as these were mentioned as indicators of heavenly intervention. It sounds like the end of all earth time, but John envisioned the end of the Roman Empire. The calamity was God's perfection through cleansing. The earth would quake, the sun would turn black, the moon would turn to blood, the stars would fall, the heavens would be destroyed, mountains would collapse, islands would disappear. He points out there's 7 things. So there's a perfect cleansing, a perfect calamity that God brings on the earth. There's also 7 kinds of earth dwellers who are affected, once again indicating a completeness. Kings and princes, chief captains, rich, strong, bondman, and freeman. Vindication was what the slain had requested, and vindication was the result. The chapter ends with a great question: who is able to stand? So after we have a brief pause, we're going to start seeing the kinds of judgments that God brought, or that God was saying that he was going to bring, beginning in the last part of 7 and 8. But before we could do that, we have to stop. There's an interlude. At the end of the seals, the 7th seal, there's a stopping point. There's a brief commercial break. You just stop for a minute, and then you move on with the next section. So before we can move on with what's going to happen in 7, we have to stop and do a job, and that job is to seal the 144,000. So let's start reading in chapter 7 and verse 1. After this I saw 4 angels standing at the 4 corners of the earth, holding back the 4 winds of the earth, to prevent any wind from blowing on the land or the sea or on any tree. Then I saw another angel coming up from the east, having the seal of the living God. He called out with a loud voice to the 4 angels who had been given power to harm the land and the sea. Do not harm the land or the sea or the trees until we put a seal on the foreheads of the servants of our God. And I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000 from all of the tribes of Israel. So just the introduction, don't do anything yet. Don't harm the earth yet, because we have to take care of some special business. We need to seal the 144,000. And we'll find out that the 144,000 are all Jews. Right? We need 144,000 Jews to be sealed before we can continue. Why that number? 144 is 12 squared. So again, 12 apostles, 12 tribes. It's a number that has a fullness to it, right? 3 is the number of the Trinity. 4 is the number of man. So 3 times 4 is 12. And so you've got all those sets of 12s. But it's a number that is representative, not specific. I don't believe that God said, okay, there's going to be 144,000, no more, no less. But it's a number that represents God's fullness of salvation among the Jewish people. If you'll run over to 13 real quick, and we won't be there for a few weeks, but I want you to see these guys again. Kind of get a picture of them again. Chapter 13, beginning in verse 11. Just ignore everybody but the 144,000 for a minute. I saw a second beast coming out of the earth. It had 2 horns like a lamb, but it spoke like a dragon. It exercised all the authority of the first beast on its behalf, made the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose fatal wound had been healed. It performed great signs, even causing fire to come down from heaven to the earth in full view of the people. Because of the signs, it was given power to perform on behalf of the first beast. It deceived the inhabitants of the earth. It ordered them to set up an image in honor of the beast, who was wounded by the sword and yet lived. The second beast was given power to give breath to the image of the first beast, so that the image could speak and cause all who refused to worship the image to be killed. It also forced people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hands or on their foreheads, so that they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of his name. So we have two different seals going on in the Revelation. Most people, when you talk about somebody being sealed, they immediately think of the number of the beast. Okay, they're going to, if I use a credit card, or I heard one time it came up that all of those little purchase seals on products, those little Scantron things, that somehow that was the mark of the beast. If you get the COVID shot, somehow that's the mark of the beast. If you have a piece of paper that says, yes, I had the COVID shot, that's the mark of the beast. So there's always something that people are trying to say, well, don't do that, because if you do that, that's the mark of the beast. But there's two different seals going on in the book of Revelation, and they're fairly simple to understand. One is those who are dedicated to God. They're sealed with the seal of God. And then there are those who are dedicated to Satan, and they are sealed with the seal of the beast. It's a little bit like old westerns. You see a guy in a white hat, you figure he's a good guy. You see a guy in a black hat, you figure he's a bad guy. You go to a football game, they wear different colored jerseys so you can keep up with the action. You know who's who by the way they're adorned. And so in Revelation, you've got folks who are wearing white, and they're pristine, they're cleansed, they belong to God. And then you have some folks who are sealed. So there's an angel that shows up with the seal of God, and they're going to seal 144,000 from all of the tribes of Israel. And then he gives a list of the tribes. Just think about all you know about the tribes of Israel. We haven't talked about them a lot, but if you go over to Genesis chapter 29 and 30, there's a genealogy there of Jacob's family members, and you could kind of keep score there. But here's what we have in this passage. From the tribe of Judah, 12,000 were sealed. From the tribe of Reuben, 12,000. From the tribe of Gad, 12,000. From the tribe of Asher, 12,000. From the tribe of Naphtali, 12,000. From the tribe of Manasseh, 12,000. From the tribe of Simeon, 12,000. From the tribe of Levi, 12,000. From the tribe of Issachar. From the tribe of Zebulun. From the tribe of Joseph. From the tribe of Benjamin. That's pretty much a straight list of the actual sons of Jacob, right? Is there anybody missing out of that list? There's only one, Dan. Dan doesn't show up in that list. So instead of him, you get an extra child of Joseph, I think is the way it evens out. Let me see if I've got that right. The tribe of Manasseh. Manasseh is not a tribe of Jacob. Manasseh is a tribe of Joseph. It's one of his twin sons. So Ephraim and Manasseh get tribal standing later on, but as you look at different lists in the Old Testament, you get different characters that are counted as the 12 tribes. In Genesis, you don't have Ephraim or Manasseh because they're not born yet. So Joseph has his own place, and he's the only one there. When you get to Numbers, you have Ephraim and Manasseh, but no Joseph, because Ephraim and Manasseh halved everything that Joseph had, and so that belonged to them. So Joseph wasn't in the allotment. So there's all kinds of variations of it. But the thing that John and the thing that the vision is trying to get across is that God hasn't forgotten anybody. Right? If you belong to God, he knows who you are. Right? You've got a seal on your head. He's planted his emblem on you and knows exactly who you are. One of the problems at the end of the first century was that the Jewish part of the church was beginning to decline while the Gentile part of the church was beginning to increase. On Sunday mornings when we're studying in Romans 9 and 10, you already see Paul struggling with that. How did God use Israel to get Gentiles in, and does God still love Israel, the physical Israel? So you've got 12 tribes that are listed here, and they are all marked. Everybody that is eligible out of those 12 tribes is marked. Now, when you think about the 144,000, that number, is there a particular religious group that comes to mind? Anybody? Yeah, the Jehovah's Witnesses. And they've been kind of misrepresented in what they actually teach, but what they do teach is that there's only 144,000 who will be in the heavenlies. They teach that the rest of us, if we were to buy into their system, can live forever in a paradise on earth. So there's only a certain number that are good enough. The 144,000 are the only ones that would be good enough to be in the heavenlies, and then the rest would have some kind of earthly abode. This passage has zip to do with that at all. Right? This is all about bad things are about to happen because of the persecution against the church, but let me make sure that you know that if you are part of mine, if you're sealed with my seal, I've got you. You're taken care of. Don't worry about it. The outcome is already taken care of. All right, there's that list. And you can kind of compare. Again, Ephraim and Manasseh haven't been born yet in Genesis. In Numbers 1, if you look down, there's Jacob has been blessed. Ephraim and Manasseh get his. And if you look up toward the top, Levi doesn't get any land when they move in. So he doesn't get listed in that list because it's a list of who gets land where. God's giving the allotments in the land of Canaan. So Levi doesn't have a land allotment. Levi lives spread out as ministers to the other 11 tribes, and they take care of Levi. And then in Revelation 7, you don't have any Dan because they're gone. And then you get down, you've got Ephraim, who is left out. And one of the reasons may be that when they tried to come in, when they got into wars later on, that Ephraim sided with Edom, or the descendants of Esau. But anyway, none of that's really important. It's just interesting to me that depending on what was going on at the time, you get a different list of the 12 tribes. All right. Look at chapter 14, beginning in verse 1. We run into these 144,000 again, and we get a little bit more specific information about them. Revelation 14, beginning in verse 1. I looked, and there before me was the Lamb standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000 who had his name and his father's name written on their foreheads. So now we kind of get an idea of what the seal says, right? The seal wasn't necessarily just an emblem, or it wasn't numbers like the 666. It says it has the name, right? So they've been marked with the name of the Father and the name of the Son. But notice the imagery here. Unless you know what's going on, you don't know exactly what you're seeing. Before me was the Lamb. Who's that? That's Jesus, right? So I saw Jesus, but I saw him in the form of a lamb, standing on Mount Zion. Where's Mount Zion? That's Jerusalem, right? So he's standing on the top where the temple used to be, and with him were 144,000. So you've got all of these pictures that made a lot more sense, perhaps, to a first century Jew than they do to a 21st century Christian. Right? We didn't have Passover lambs, and we don't visit Mount Zion. It's something that we're not as familiar with as they are. I heard a sound, verse 2, from heaven like the roar of rushing waters and like the loud peal of thunder. The sound I heard was like that of harps playing on their harps. They sang a new song before the throne and before the four living creatures and the elders, and no one could learn the song except the 144,000 who had been redeemed from the earth. Right? So we've been looking at different worship leaders. When you get to 14, you have a group that's worshiping, but nobody else can worship with them because nobody else knows the words to the song. Only the 144,000 know the song. And that's plenty for a good chorus, by the way. If you got 144,000, you can make a good sound. These are those who did not defile themselves with women. They remained virgins. They follow the Lamb wherever he goes. They were purchased from among mankind and offered as firstfruits to God and the Lamb. No lie was found in their mouths, and they are blameless. Right? So if you want to claim that there will only be 144,000 that make the grade to be in heaven, right? The 144,000 cannot be any Gentiles. All of these are Jews. Right? They can't be anyone who's ever been married, because all of these are virgins. They can't be anyone who has never been with Jesus before, because all of these are following the Lamb. And then finally, if you've ever told a lie, you're out. Right? So again, this is visionary. This is a picture of those who have been swept into the company of Christ for a particular reason. What's the particular reason? Probably these folks, it says, were the first fruits. Probably they died by way of persecution. Right? They were offered as sacrifices. So you've got the sacrificial lamb who's being followed by other sacrifices. 144,000, just that general wide term to describe the fullness of those who were martyred for the cause of Christ. Remember at the very end of chapter 6 when we looked at the fifth seal, and there's all these people under the altar saying, how long is it going to be until you avenge us and bring judgment against those people who did this to us? And then all of a sudden we're in 7 and we're marking those who are the 144,000. You go to 14, you find out that those folks are probably more martyrs. Right? So the number of martyrs is growing, but God hasn't forgotten anybody. Right? And going down to verse 9. After this I looked, and there before me was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, tribe, people, and language, standing before the throne and before the Lamb. They were wearing white robes and were holding palm branches in their hands. So we're away from the 144,000. This is a different category. This is people from every nation, every tribe, and every tongue. So this is Gentiles in general. But they also are in the presence of God. They're also in the heavenlies. And they're also going to be singing praise songs in the throne room. They're wearing white robes, which means that they are purified. They're holy. They've been made righteous by the blood of the Lamb. So all of these folks now are gathered up in front of the throne room, and they break out in praise. Salvation belongs to our God, who sits on the throne, and to the Lamb. And all the angels who were standing around the throne and around the elders and the four living creatures, they fell down on their faces before the throne, and they worshiped God, saying, Amen. Praise and glory and wisdom and thanks and honor and power and strength be to our God forever and ever. Amen. So you have another group who starts a praise, and then again all those closest, the 24 elders and all the angels that are close by the throne, they all take up the theme and they all start praising. So, chapter by chapter by chapter, we keep meeting new groups that show up at the throne and they start some praise, and everybody else that's around gathers in with them to praise God. Verse 13, one of the elders asked me, these in white robes, who are they and where did they come from? Now, if you're John, you're the visitor. They told you to come up here and look at what was going on. You show up, they show you something, and then they give you a pop quiz. Okay, John, who are these folks and where did they come from? And John's answer is, sir, you know. In other words, you tell me. I don't know. You must have an idea. You're an angel. I'm just a visitor here. So John says, sir, you know. And he said, these are they who have come out of the great tribulation. They've washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Therefore, they are before the throne of God and serve him day and night in his temple. He who sits on the throne will shelter them with his presence. Okay, so who are these guys wearing white? Well, they're the ones who have come out of the tribulation. So again, this may be a picture of more folks who have been persecuted. Right? Maybe they've died for the cause. So you've got souls under the altar. They're given white robes and told, wait a little while. Then you've got the 144,000 that are marked out. We find out later that they're probably martyrs. Then we get these guys who are all dressed in white. They're martyrs. They've come out of the great persecution. So we're getting this panoramic view of maybe many hundreds of years, maybe many continents, but all these people who have been faithful even though it caused them their death. So all of these white-robed throngs that are coming in and praising God together are identified as folks who have been under persecution, and they've stayed faithful. They've received the white robe. They serve him day and night in his temple, and the one who sits on the throne will shelter them with his presence. Nothing else bad is going to happen to them. Never again will they hunger. Never again will they thirst. The sun will not beat down on them, nor any scorching heat. The Lamb at the center of the throne will be their shepherd. He will lead them to springs of living water, and God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. So everything's going to be okay. Nobody can hurt you here. Right? Whatever they did to you in the persecution, whatever they did to you because you believed in me, that's all taken care of. Right? You died there, but you'll never die here. You were persecuted there, but they can't touch you here. You're under my protection. And then a couple of interesting metaphors that I like. Their robes were made white by washing them in blood. Right? So you get cleansed by coming into the blood of the Lamb. Would you be free from your burden of sin? There's power in the blood. There's power in the blood. And then the Lamb is the shepherd for all of these who have come in to follow him. They follow him, so the Lamb, this Lamb that's been slain, this Lamb that's been sacrificed, is now the shepherd for all of these others who are coming in. He knows what it's like to die for the cause. He knows what it's like to be in the heavenlies, and all of these newbies that are coming in, having been persecuted on earth, come to find out that what they were promised on earth is true, and that the Father and the Lamb have got their back, and everything's going to be okay. So all of, the end of 6 and all of 7 is a lead up to what God's about to start doing to the people who have been messing with his people. Right? All of his people now are taken care of. They've been identified. Everything's okay with the martyrs. And then as we get into 8 and move on, we'll start seeing God unfold his wrath. So let's just get the first verse of 8, and we'll leave it here. When he opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. So something big is getting ready to happen. There's a movement that's going on, and we've got to stop and pause and pay attention. And then, right? So we're not praising. There's no visions. There's no shouts. Everything is quiet in heaven. And John is just waiting for the next thing to happen. So, Lord willing, we'll pick up with that in chapter 8 next week. So, we'll tell you guys bye.